Welcome to Long Box, where you pull comics out of the long box. I'm wrapping up the X-Cutioner song. This is the last one. I'm excited. It's the climax of Cable and Stryfe's battle, and we're gonna see what goes on here as they fight. And this is supposed to be the most epic conclusion to this entire arc, right? First off, let me say both comics are actually the covers are what you'd expect, and they're decent covers. Here, let me see if I can get this one off the glare. Yeah, they illustrate what's in the comic. I love that. Very good. So we open up part 11 with Wolverine, Bishop, and Cable entering the moon base, and they're having to fight off all of Stryfe's minions. And there's a lot of them. They're bred for war, all three of them. But even then, it's just too much. And Wolverine's going crazy, just taking out as many as he can. Bishop and Cable are both like, dude, you're too wild here. But they're fighting off, and Wolverine gets blasted by Gauntlet, I think is what his name was, some Dark Rider. And he's taken out of the fight for a little bit. They are going to go down. There's just too many enemies and not enough people. And you know who comes into the day? Who saves them? The X-Men. And of course, the X-Men save the day, and they help fight off all the minions, which is great because that means our three favorite warriors don't die. And Apocalypse with them, and I didn't realize this, but he did. While they're all talking, Stryfe's doing his plan. Going to the climax, it's important to know that Stryfe is messed up in the head. And we'll get to that later, but he definitely has parent issues, which, to be fair, like we know, Stryfe is a version of Cable. Of Nathan Summers, because Cable is his own path of time of Nathan Summers became Cable, right? He grew up from being a little boy to becoming the man known as Cable, whereas Nathan Summers is still just is a boy, and Stryfe is a version of that. Long story short, if you remember back in the comics, Nathan Summers was infected by Apocalypse with the technovirus, and they sent him to the future so that way he can be cured. They sacrificed him one time, and that's mostly like Stryfe's issues, is that he was thrown to the future and he never had his parents, which is funny because reading back and going back over old comics and stuff, Nathan's mom is not Jean Grey, technically. It's her clone, like Madeline Pryor. That is the mother of Nathan Summers, even though Jean Grey helped raise the boy. That is not her biological son. It's her genetical son, but I thought that was interesting to know. So Stryfe takes Scott and Jean and rushes them off for the next step of his plan outside of the tower in space. There was one scene that I found interesting that I did want to talk about. The Dark Riders split. They fled, and Storm led a team with Logan and Psylocke in it, and they opened up a door, right? And you know the classic trope, you open up the door, there's a vacuum in space. Excuse me. Well, somehow, and this was weird for me the first time I read it, I see where they're going for, but somehow Storm stops the vacuum of space from sucking everybody out, which I don't know if that would work like that. Um, I mean, I guess that the air inside the base she could hold back. Maybe. I mean, it's not technically weather, and it's not atmospheric conditions. It's artificial, it's manufactured air, right? So it seems weird that that's her power set is to stop people from being sucked out into the vacuum of space. Apocalypse chases down his Dark Riders as like, I'm gonna kill you, survival of the fittest. Apocalypse is weak at this time, so he's it for a fight. Um, there's another team that chase after Stryfe. Cable, Speedball, Havoc, Polaris, I think. And they're all on a ship together, chasing down Stryfe. And they put suits on. They get in. They get on onto the base of the moon. And there's this telekinetic wall, right? This great big wall that separates them. And two of them get through. Havoc and Cable. Okay. Speedball and Polaris do not. This is cool. So what this tells me is that this is a telekinetic barrier that is meant to prevent people not of a certain DNA. Okay. Cable is the son of Scott Summers. Okay, he is the son of Scott Summers. He shares his DNA. Stryfe, son of Scott Summers. Jean Grey, wife. So technically, she shouldn't have been able to go through. But if Stryfe pulled her through first, then before the barrier was built, then she could go through. Okay, Havoc, brother of Scott Summers, Alex Summers. Okay. And then yes, Scott. So 5 of the 6 people, or 4 of the 5 people, are all related to Scott Summers. So they can all go through the barrier that Stryfe's built. I thought that was really neat. I love when writers use the relations of their characters for an important reason. Because Havoc can be more than just a superhero. He can also have consequences of being Scott's brother, and that's great to see. Then we get our fight. We get our fight of Stryfe, Cable, duking it out, beating each other up. Havoc is still stunned for right now, and they're just fighting. They're pummeling, beating each other up. At one point, Cable lets his telekinetic powers go and hits Stryfe with the full force of his power. And what it does to Cable is because he stopped holding back the technovirus, half of his body became robotic in an instant. Which is insane. Because we saw how long it took for the technovirus to consume Xavier, right? This took but a second, and Cable was consumed halfway down his body, and at the same time his psychic powers hit the full force of an explosion, knocking back Stryfe. He has a ton of telekinetic powers that he's holding back this virus that in just 1 second consumes almost half of him. That is a ton of work and energy he's putting to holding back the virus, which just tells you how much power Cable has if he wasn't at a handicap. Archangel, throughout this, Archangel's had a great arc. We opened with Archangel, with Warren, and his arc has been one of the best in this 12-issue series, because of Apocalypse. And here he is above Apocalypse, watching Apocalypse bleed out. And Archangel could end him there. That is what Apocalypse was taught him to do. And he could, but Archangel does not. He doesn't show mercy, he doesn't help him out, he just walks away. And that's it. And that tells you a lot about how Archangel considers Apocalypse. That's it. And Apocalypse is bleeding out. We probably will see him again. But then we have more fighting between... and this is a cool fight scene. Basically, most of this comic is just their fight. And it's pretty good. Havoc gets a good blast in right about now. And it knocks Stryfe back and gives everyone a couple more seconds. Because Jean Grey is trying to break free. And the more Stryfe is distracted, the more she can break free. And then Stryfe snaps. And he goes crazy. He's like, I'll show you the legacy you left me. And he starts shooting his eyes into the air and telekinetic power shooting out. He crumbles the tower. And there's everything is being destroyed around them. And everyone, except for Cable and Stryfe, on this battlefield, is in a telekinetic barrier held by Jean. Cable gets up, tosses Scott a little device, while Stryfe can't see, right? And Cable says, "Do it, Summers." And self-destruct's going. Self-destruct's counting. Cable turned it on. And time's running out. And Scott's like, I can't do this. Scott knows this is his son. In fact, both of them are versions of his son, right? And he's like, I can't do this. I can't do this to them. And Cable's like, Summers, you have to do it for the sake of all of us right now. And he pulls the button. And Cable evaporates, taking Stryfe with him. Wherever, we don't know. And Scott's like, Scott has his moment where he's like, I had to sacrifice my son again. To save the world, essentially. And that's that. That's the comic. That's the run. Xavier is healing. And Apocalypse. Not Apocalypse. Apocalypse is bleeding on the floor. Xavier is healing. My phone just started listening. But Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister's had a hand in all of this. He's by far my favorite villain of the arc. I like Stryfe, but more so I like Stryfe because he provides other characters development. He gives Cable great development throughout this comic. He gives Scott good development. And it's not because I like Stryfe. I think Stryfe is poorly written. But more that he, as he exists, lets other characters be better. And that's cool. Mr. Sinister, best villain so far. Okay. And you remember that thing he got from Stryfe all the way back? Well, he finally opens it. And you know what's in there? Nothing. And that's it. That's the end of the comic. This arc's been fun. I've enjoyed this arc. There's definitely been low points. There's been stuff that's not been as interesting or as good as it could be. But this, I really enjoyed this last comic. Which is good. Recommend. See you next time.